It started with a handshake that felt like an apology, half-hearted, limp, and rushed, like she wanted to wash her hands afterward. My name is Aisha Khan, and I was born in Houston, Texas, raised on roti and Beyoncé, and somehow managed to graduate summa cum laude with a degree in marketing despite working 2 jobs and taking care of my father when his kidneys failed. I walked into the recruiting event for Ascend & Company, one of the biggest ad agencies in the state, wearing my best Goodwill suit, my hijab neatly pinned, and a portfolio that had already landed me 2 freelance national campaigns. I was there early, heart-pounding, Pope-stitched into every step. When I stepped up to the table, the recruiter, blonde, clipboard-hugging, and name-tagged Mallory, looked me up and down and said, "Oh, you're Aisha? That's interesting. You're local." I smiled, used to that question, nodded, and said, "Yes, born and raised." Then she tilted her head and asked, "Where's your accent from?" I paused, confused, because I wasn't aware I had one, unless being brown and pronouncing your syllables crisply counted as an accent now. I joked, lightly, "Houston Heights. Class of 2010. But her lips pressed thin, and she handed me a generic flyer instead of a business card. "Thanks for coming. We're looking for candidates who can represent the brand. Verbally, too. Clear, neutral English." I stood there, heat rising under my scarf, unsure if I should scream or laugh. "I speak English," I said, slowly. "It's my first language." She waved me off. "Of course. I just mean, no offense, but our clients tend to prefer more standard tones." I walked out of that convention center like I was carrying bricks in my chest. The irony? Ascend & Company was running an entire diversity initiative at the time called Voices of the City. I'd seen the billboards, smiling faces, bold fonts. But clearly, some voices were more marketable than others. That night, I posted on LinkedIn, trying to keep it diplomatic, but the words poured out like a dam cracked open. Today, I was told my accent didn't sound standard enough for an advertising role in my own city. I was born here. My clients have included 3 national brands. What, exactly, is standard supposed to mean? I attached a video of myself reading ad copy from my portfolio. Calm, precise, professional. My voice didn't stutter once. By morning, the post had gone viral. Thousands of comments, shares, DMs from recruiters and allies. But the one that stuck out came from an older black woman named Lena Carter, head of talent for a rival firm. She simply wrote, "Coming next week. I'd like to hear your voice in person." I did. And she listened, really listened. Not just to the pitch in my voice, but the soul behind it. Within 2 months, I was hired full-time as a brand strategist. The first project I was given? A rebranding campaign for a national women's healthcare nonprofit. They wanted something warm, powerful, inclusive. Lena leaned over in our kickoff meeting and said, "You're writing the script and voicing it." I blinked. "Wait, me?" She smiled. "They loved your video. Your voice is exactly what they're looking for." I recorded it in one take. The first time I heard it on the radio, I sat in my car and cried. But I wasn't done with Ascend & Company yet. Because Karma wanted to speak. Loud and clear. I wish I could say I felt pure triumph when my voice hit the airwaves, but honestly, I felt rage first. Not fire-breathing, all-consuming rage, something colder, quieter. The kind that sits in your throat like a stone, reminding you every day that you were once deemed too other to belong. It wasn't just Mallory's voice in my head. It was every sideways glance in boardrooms when I introduced myself, every pause after I said, "Aisha," during phone screenings, every time someone said, "You're so articulate," like it was a compliment. But the day my commercial aired for the first time, it was like the universe wanted to remind me that justice doesn't always come clean. It comes layered, complicated, and sometimes poetic. My voice was narrating a powerful campaign about women's access to health care, playing over a montage of mothers, daughters, workers, and activists' faces from every walk of life. My team had worked so hard to make sure the visuals matched the mission. We launched it across radio, YouTube, streaming services, and my favorite, transit billboards with QR codes that played my audio clip when scanned. It was surreal, watching strangers pull out their phones on the train platform and hear my voice say, "Your body, your voice, your power, this city hears you." I thought maybe I could move on. I had a new job, supportive coworkers, a salary that didn't make me choose between groceries and gas. But one morning, as I sipped burnt office coffee and skimmed campaign feedback, an email popped up with the subject line, "Client complaint, urgent." I opened it, bracing. It was from the marketing director of a luxury real estate group sponsoring one of our side campaigns. And in the forwarded message, there she was, Mallory C., now their external brand consultant. My throat tightened. Her email was laced with polite venom. While the visuals in the campaign are strong, the voiceover doesn't match the premium tone our clients expect. It comes off a bit regional, even ethnic. Perhaps consider a more neutral-sounding narrator. Lena called me into her office before I could reply. I'll never forget how she sat there, arms folded, reading the email aloud with a tone that could peel paint off walls. Ethnic, she repeated, like the word tasted rotten. Then she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "We're not changing a thing. And we're not dropping the campaign." I don't know what she did behind the scenes, some combination of boardroom leverage, client diplomacy, and HR-savvy fireworks, but the complaint went nowhere. In fact, the nonprofit we were working with doubled down and asked us to extend the campaign by 3 months. More airtime, more placements. My voice was now part of a citywide PSA push, which meant new billboards, bigger ones. One of them? Right outside Ascend & Company as headquarters. Lena made sure of it. The day it went up, our whole team took a long lunch break and walked by accidentally through that part of downtown. I stood across the street, staring up at the billboard, my voice echoing from a nearby bus at like divine background music. I could feel them watching from the windows. And then, like fate dropping a cherry on top, Mallory came out the building. She spotted us. Her eyes locked on mine. She froze, just long enough for my coworker Janelle to whisper, "That her." I nodded. Mallory blinked, opened her mouth like she might say something, then turned and walked the other way. I wasn't petty enough to follow, but I did smile. Because even though she didn't remember my name that day at the convention center, she sure as hell would remember my voice. Later that week, someone anonymously forwarded me a Slack screenshot from inside Ascend & Company. Their internal DI channel was exploding with angry messages. Apparently, a few junior employees had seen my post back when it went viral and recognized the recruiter's behavior. There were whispers about past complaints, about how Mallory had quietly pushed out black and brown interns for being unpolished or too casual. HR had to start an internal review. She tried to scrub her LinkedIn of any involvement in the Voices of the City campaign, but it was too late. The receipts were everywhere. Still, she didn't lose her job yet. Not everyone gets the fall they deserve. But sometimes, exposure is its own sentence. And I wasn't done telling the story. Because people needed to hear not just my voice, but the truth behind it. I didn't think telling my story would change the world. I just wanted to reclaim something Mallory tried to steal, my right to be heard. But the thing about truth is that once it's out there, it travels. It multiplies. It connects. A week after the billboard went up, I got a message from a producer at a podcast called Voiced, a platform that highlights marginalized creatives in media. They'd seen the campaign and read my LinkedIn post. "We want you to come on," the host wrote. "Talk about what happened. We think people need to hear it from you." I hesitated. I wasn't used to being the story. I was the girl behind the camera, the strategist in the room, not the spotlight. But my dad, who was still doing dialysis, still my biggest fan, looked at me over his chai and said, "You were always meant to be heard. Don't make yourself small because they told you to." So I went. And I talked. I told them everything. From the handshake at the convention center to the quiet rage behind the email to the feeling of standing beneath that billboard, like I'd finally unzipped the weight off my chest. The episode went viral. Not just because of me, but because of how familiar it felt to so many people. I got thousands of DMs. Some from young women in hijabs, like me, saying they'd been told to soften their voice in interviews. Some from black men who'd been told they sounded too urban for certain roles. One Latina woman messaged, "I got rejected from a casting because they said my English sounded like tacos." I cried in the car. "Thank you for speaking." And then came the message I didn't expect, from a woman named Chelsea. "You don't know me," she wrote, "but I interned at Ascend last summer." I saw what Mallory did. I wanted to say something then, but I was scared. I'm not anymore. Attached was a Google document. It detailed 4 separate incidents involving Mallory over the last 3 years, verbatim quotes, emails, even screenshots. It was damning. And Chelsea wasn't the only one. A small group of former employees came together, inspired by the podcast. They created a dossier, presented it to the press anonymously. Within a week, an investigative article dropped. Inside the Sound of Silence, How a top ad agency marginalized voices in the name of neutrality. Mallory's name was in the first paragraph. The article quoted her now infamous email about my voice being too ethnic. It detailed patterns of discrimination, systemic biases in hiring, how the firm's diversity branding often masked a very homogeneous internal culture. Ascendant Company tried to spin it at first, released a vague statement about listening and learning. But it didn't land. Too many receipts. Too many stories. Too many of us, finally speaking. Mallory stepped down a week later. It wasn't jail. It wasn't even a full reckoning. But it was something. And I kept going. The nonprofit rehired us for another project, this time centered on mental health for immigrant women. And when they asked who should voice it, they didn't even blink. I shall, of course. I was no longer just a strategist. I became the head of inclusive storytelling at my agency. I started mentoring interns, making sure they saw someone who looked and sounded like them in the rooms where decisions got made. But the moment that broke me, in the best way, came months later, on a random Tuesday night. My dad and I were driving home from the clinic. He was tired, eyes heavy, but smiling. The radio was on low, and then my voice came through. You are worthy. You are powerful. This city hears you. My dad turned it up, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "That's my daughter." I couldn't speak. My voice was already doing the talking. So here I am now, telling you, don't let them reduce you to a stereotype, a soundbite, a silence. Don't let them rewrite what you were born to say. My voice was once dismissed as too much of something, but it became the sound of something bigger. And I promise you, it won't be the last time they hear me. Or us.